Yo, Adam, what is good? We actually have Chris on stage today because
wait, I didn't get to kick him off yet.
Absolutely hilarious. Excited for today's space. You know, when we do market talk, I was talking about this earlier. When we do market talk, you know, they tend to be a little bit smaller because everyone and their mom does a market talk.
Does market talk.
A highly competitive space, but I like when we get to cover ordinals and kind of everything in our ecosystem. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. If anyone wants to join the conversation, please come on stage. It's a very open conversation. But how are you feeling today, Adam?
Feeling great, man. Getting over a cold, but feeling good finally. So excited about this, man. There's so much going on, dude. It's got bull market vibes all over it. You know, I've tweeted about it for the last couple of days now. It just has that feeling, man. You know, like everything's popping. Like, what is the next? I don't even know what it was. It's Blast, okay, but then there's, I don't know, Portal. Like, it's like, what? New chains, new everything. You know, it has those vibes right now, man. And hold on to your hats. I'd love to hear different people's points of view from like a buying perspective, because it's real easy to burn through all your Bitcoin or ETH right now, you know, buying into stuff. So, you know, being a little bit conservative. I see people picking up, you know, some grails. We can talk about that. But love to hear different perspectives on it, because it is very, very easy to fall into FOMO in these sort of environments.
Yeah, I actually, if you guys stay to the end of the space, I actually have some alpha I will reveal about a project I've been working on for 8 months up until this point. So it has to do with ordinals. So
whoa, what the heck?
Chris,
you're hiding this from me, Jake, bro? What's up with this?
Yeah, it's been out in the public. I just haven't really talked about it publicly until the time was right. You know what happens when you build these projects, I've learned, is you come out and you present the idea, and then a lot of times you just go into hiding while you're building it. And so this is where some of the projects end up just rugging, because they're like, yo, fuck, this is actually harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yep.
But 8 months of building, man, it's been quite a tough adventure to get that done. So we'll save that to the end. But Chris, man, sorry about yesterday. I know you were basically in the version of Twitter jail that we used to celebrate on Twitter back in the day. How are you feeling today?
Yo, I am back from exile, feeling good. Yeah, I love these spaces, the market talk ones. A lot of people do them, but you know, we have such kind of a unique perspective on the whole ecosystem, from some like historicals where you guys are to new up and coming things, and just kind of, you know, getting into these trends and kind of just talking about overall goals of what you might want to accomplish in you know, a new kind of refreshed market. So that's always a good one, just to kind of, you know, get with the community and kind of see what people are keeping their eyes on, what people are collecting, and what people might think you know, might be the next up and coming thing going into the new year. So pretty excited about it. The Pepe space yesterday was really fun. I feel like that got a lot of traction, and there's just like so much energy around that community that's kind of renewed, and you know, so many new faces are popping up. So obviously I feel like that's going to be a big trend going forward. But yeah, excited to talk about it, excited to get into it.
Yeah, the hold on. I'm also going to pin to the top the spaces. Just appreciate everyone who could retweet it if you'd like, so we could get some more people in this conversation. Last but certainly not least, we got Prism on stage, one of the top Ordinal artists. Man, how is it going?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm glad to be here. We are back, aren't we? We got some energy going. We might be at that peak FOMO, and where we have to kind of sit back and let's just see what happens next. But it's been a fun ride over the past couple of weeks, that's for sure.
That it definitely has. You know, we'll start with some Ordinal talk right at the beginning. I actually was trying to get any of these like 4 founders onto the show today. I invited Sanj, I invited the Untoshi from Unordinals. I hit up Jerry and Raph from Ordibots, and then the Node Monkey guys didn't respond. These are all mints that are going to be happening or have happened over the last week and then into the rest of the year. It seems like a good time. I was tweeting, you know, when Sats and Ordi took off and literally went like 100x or whatever. I was like, you know, it's probably a good time for collections to start dropping these, because there's a lot of money just kind of sloshing around in the ecosystem, and people are minting meme coins and now they need to spend it. And it seems like it went well. I don't know, Adam, did you see what happened yesterday with the Ordibots mint, where MEV is now on Bitcoin? Or it's like it's been there, but it's like
nobody actually can figure it out, right? Yeah,
it's front and center. So yeah. Ordibots was a collection created by Raph and Jerry, who created Doge Punks, and then they had Ordibots V1. They created a new standard. I believe this one was called BRC. Is it 420 or 69? Prism, do you know? I don't remember which one it is. Or maybe Dogfather knows. Dogfather, do you know which one it was?
Not 100%, but I experienced the mint, and if you guys like, I can share my experience.
Yeah, please take us through as someone. I picked up some on secondary just because I was interested in the collection, but from what I was hearing, everyone said it was the worst minting experience they've experienced so far.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're a bit spoiled, you know, because typically, you know, in a bear market, then everything is a bit smooth and not that much demand. So, I mean, first of all, Magic Eden had some technical issues. I think the team was not responsible for that. So they had a mint page, and you could check whether your wallet is, you know, whitelisted. And that was not working for quite some time. And imagine how the Discord was looking like. So everyone was panicking. So they gave out some whitelists, you know, like usual, but it was pretty much oversubscribed. So they handed out 4 times more whitelist spots than, you know, actual spots. So it was a pretty competitive, I would say, whitelist. So you had to be early. So everyone went there clicking at on the first second when they could. So like 4,000 people clicking with like, I don't know, 600, 700 spots. So the site was crashing for like half an hour. So everyone was clicking. Nobody stopped, of course, you know, full legion. And so I was lucky. So I could mint mine, you know, like, I don't know, for $10 or so. But many people got front run. So I think this was the first time people really discovered that, yeah, you can sign a PSBT. But if someone is, you know, signing the same one with a higher fee, they take, you know, they receive the inscription. So I think that, according to my knowledge, it was the first time this happened at such a scale. So I think we need to up our game. Right?
How many? Does that mean that, for example, you were whitelisted, and you actually got it in there, were able to click and it went through? does that mean that I, even though I wasn't whitelisted, could basically then swipe it from you?
Yeah, if you're technically savvy, you could do that. It's
Wow.
I mean, I'm not, smart enough to do that, but basically you could kind of mimic my, I don't know how they do that, and just pay a higher fee, and then the Audibot went into the sniper's wallet. So
Wow.
I think Leo was tweeting about that. Maybe you find that tweet and can pin it. So yeah, so Magic Eden was sorry about that. The team, I think, created some more Audibots and sent them to the victims. Yeah, so I think we learned a lot in these times, in these experiments. So I would not say that this was like a horrible mint, but definitely a mint where we can learn a lot. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, I was listening to the Ordinals show yesterday, kind of discuss what are the options here. Cypher, Charlie, Leonidas, Tio. Seems like the only solutions here are you either the marketplace creates this process to where the PSBT has to be signed by the original purchaser. So you have, right, if you're going through this allow list, if you're trying to mint Ordibot, first you sign the transaction, excuse me, and then on the back end, the marketplace then signs it to say, yep, this is the partially signed. Now the process could go through. But if they add a third option to where then the original owner has to sign it, then you could cut out all the MEVers. The only downside here is you create a centralized marketplace where where everything has to take place on that marketplace itself, which obviously, right, we've learned that centralized marketplaces, yes, they have your interest in mind. They have their interests, but also you could lose your assets, right, as well. Right, we learned through this last bull market that we keep repeating the same issue over and over. Mt. Gox in 2013, right? Then is FTX, right? Centralized exchanges, there's a lot of risks. And so you don't want to go that route. There was another option in terms of like how to build this technically, but it seems like, in my opinion, that MEV is not going to go away. People are going to come up with all these different solutions. And then users are going to just really figure it out, right? It's kind of a war space when it comes to MEV. It's really a battleground.
Does anybody feel like we're rerunning 2021 with the mint wars? I mean, it's like, bro, it is so interesting how we just the space as a whole just reruns the same issues, right? These issues are technical challenges. Really, really fun to do this stuff. Yeah, go ahead, Dogfather.
I think in this example where we have kind of like a free mint, I think it costs like $10 or so. I think it's okay if you have some more centralization. If it's like an expensive mint, you would not want that. So it really depends. I think in this particular case, I think it would be okay if Magic Eden would temporarily hold and own the assets and just send them to the right and whitelisted wallet.
Yeah, totally, man. Totally. I mean, it's just that's you just know that's going to happen, right? If we're talking about artists, we got Prism on stage here or whatever, but you're an artist, you're selling to a group of collectors or whatever, you've whitelisted people. Obviously, you don't want this to take place and create a bad, experience. Go ahead, Prism.
Yeah, that was a question I had because we built our own mint tech, and we're obviously fine with it being a little bit more centralized since we're the ones inscribing all of this stuff anyway. And we don't necessarily set it up in the same way as these marketplaces do. It essentially, you submit a payment, it grabs an inscription ID from the list that we have, and then grabs that out of the wallet and sends it. So it's done just a little bit differently, obviously more centralized. But I'm curious, with Magic Eden, because you do have to send them ordinals in order to have your mint on their launchpad. So I'm curious if anyone knows why they've chosen to do it another route, why they've chosen to do like PSBTs.
I think it's just because it's maybe the market standard. It's been adopted between Ordinals Wallet, Magic Eden, Unisat. So everyone's kind of using the same, and they want to create maybe some sort of synchronicity. I did hear another option. I forget who brought this up yesterday about this idea of dark pools, where basically the marketplace owns the mempool. It's kind of like a private mempool. which can then obfuscate the MEVers. This is the idea of dark pools has been around in Bitcoin for a long time. The actual practice and implementation of it, though, is much more difficult. This is where they got into the conversation about Jack Dorsey and Luke Jr.'s ocean mining pool. Did you hear about this, Adam?
Bro, I'm telling you, we are rerunning history. All you got to do is look at your history to know we ran this route in 2016 and 17. It was funny. I don't know if it was Udi or somebody, posted a Bitcoin Talk forum where it's literally Luke Dash Jr. in there, like, this spam will not be tolerated when they're talking about counterparty, right? And it's just like, wow, here we are. We're literally rerunning the exact same thing. And it's very interesting that Jack, obviously deep pockets, is supporting what Luke's doing with that mining company or whatever that, I don't know if it's a tech company that helps miners or actually if they actually have miners themselves, but basically threatening to take away ordinals, not accept ordinal transactions, which is censorship. And when you talk, I'll pin the tweet up top. I'll go find one of the good tweets about it, but it's this idea that they want to create, and obviously Jack has said many times he wants to create censorship resistant networks. And the first duty he supports is this huge censorship maxi. So it's just it's so interesting when you look at the history and see where this goes.
Yep. Excuse me. I pulled up the tweet on the live stream from Checksum. He's a guy who's been a Bitcoin miner since 2010, owns his own mining pool. He said here that the new preachers of transparency in mining, ocean mining, have been caught with their pants down, hiding several things. He said he had been monitoring it, and they're excluding transactions costing an average of 5 to 10% in fees. Obviously, this is what inscriptions are. And he goes on to talk about how you have to pay a higher cost if you want to be in their private pool. And I was listening to the explanation of like what they're actually attempting to do here. And I forget who was explaining it. I think it was Cypher was explaining, and Charlie, because they're really experts in mining. It's this idea of like a block construction, which I guess has been attempted a handful of times of constructing blocks in a more efficient way. And it has to do with private pools and working with private miners. This company, I guess, raised $6.5 million to really do it, or maybe it was Jack's money. Is really the one who's funding it. But I think it's going to be tough to, get users or miners to come in and mine a pool where the transactions are, or the fees are significantly less to what you could just go do out in the public.
You could see this happening, right? Like somebody was like, how long could they do that? And you realize like they could do it for years. But you recognize that anybody who if you just take it out to the next level to, okay, Jack Dorsey has basically billions of dollars, how long can he run a miner that censors transactions? Like for probably decades. And if you then take it out to a next level where you look at a state actor, you look at it in an infinite time span of being able to do this. And so you see that there's a significant risk to ordinals and potentially a Bitcoin network. Like you start to worry about these things. If we truly want Bitcoin as a censorship-free network, these things have to be handled, and the community has to decide that we're not going to work that way. This is an attack vector.
Chris, we joined Bitcoin back in 2016. We've actually, I think, had a handful of conversations about, Bitcoin mining and decentralization. Do you think there is any staying power here as a private mining pool backed by Jack Dorsey? Do you think it'll appeal to institutions? Because obviously retail is probably not going to be interested.
Yeah, it's tough to get the full picture from what he's doing. He's kind of shown his cards. I feel like he's an idealist. I feel like he has a pretty good grasp on the whole ecosystem. So this kind of caught me off guard as to kind of like, what are you thinking? Like he obviously would know that there would be a ton of backlash from the community. I don't think that he would go in blindly. So I obviously feel like he has some type of plan, but at the end of the day, there's going to be open miners. So I feel like it's not too big of a concern for the network or anything necessarily like that puts the chain at risk. But I feel like it was just kind of, I don't see how it can be a blunder for him. I feel like he is so kind of in the weeds with everything that he would have had to see this coming. And obviously people would raise major concerns with what he was doing. So definitely caught me off guard, but I find it kind of hard to believe that it caught him off guard as to he wouldn't know that there would be some sort of backlash. So I feel like maybe we're not understanding the whole story here somehow.
That's kind of how I'm viewing it as well. I mean, Jack's also spun up his own mining farm in Texas. I think they're doing like a renewable mining farm. So maybe that's who's mining these actual pools. Or, he has prior agreements, off chain with some sort of institutions, and this is how they want to go about it. Maybe he's taking some sort of regulatory approach. It's really tough to know. I think there is a lot of information though.
And
that is
like
here.
The US is the global leader in Bitcoin mining at this point in time. And it's really people like Jack Dorsey and Michael Saylor and these people that are at the forefront of Bitcoin for the last couple of years in the biggest way possible to have the, biggest insight into what's going on through that growth. So I have to say that, he definitely knows what he's doing. He would know that there would be some sort of backlash. So I don't know. I think that there's more to the story, but I think that he definitely knows what he's doing.
Yeah, it is quite interesting, to say the least. But kind of in the same realm of mining that's increasing inscriptions costs, one thing that I've been following quite closely is this new idea of digital matter theory. Adam, have you been following this at all? Are you familiar?
Tell me about this. Digital matter. I'm loving this. What is this?
I know you're a bitmap denier, but so the block runner guys, I've had them on my podcast. I've talked with them. This was the second ever mint out. There was actually a lot of confusion. So I actually find this pretty interesting because it can apply to things that are outside of bitmap. So digital matter theory. First, I want to preface to say the largest export of Bitcoin in 2023 has just been theories, right? You got ordinal theory, you got digital matter theory, you got bitmap theory. It's just a philosophical ideals all the way down the board. What this is it's two things. First, it's a new form of a decentralized mint. So the first kind of introduction to the decentralized mint was the first in first out method, right? It was like how Bitcoin punks are created and how everything works now. If you're the first one to inscribe to this collection, that's yours. Here it is. This is a new one by kind of, I guess you'd say, proof of work. I'm going to say mining in quotes here. You're mining for digital commodities in essence. So what you're doing here in digital matter theory is you're looking for a arbitrary data rule set in the Bitcoin mining, in Bitcoin mining's data set. So for example, you look throughout the span of 800,000 blocks and you find that there's the number 69 in every single block. So you can set up and say, hey, you can go, I'm creating this token called 69 coin. And if you go inscribe, if you go look throughout the history of all the blocks, you can go look for the blocks that has the number that it appears 69 the most times in this numbers. And then that translates to the amount of 69 coin that you will mint, right? But essentially it's in a form of BRC20. And this to me is interesting because first it's a free and fair mint, but now you can create essentially, hundreds, if not thousands of different types of BRC20s. Mm-hmm. But it definitely makes this not a security, right? If it's a digital commodity, it's proof of work. You're basically mining for these gems or different types of, I think they call them elements in the idea. And so the first one that they created was called NAT, which is non-arbitrary tokens. That's what they're calling it. So it's digital matter theory. And then the token types are calling non-arbitrary tokens. But of course, in very Ordinals way, the first token is always going to be literally the name of what the tokens are called, right? Like for BRC20, it's Ordi, you got Light and Doji and whatever. So this one is called NAT. And this inscribed out 800,000 blocks in 7 days, which is absolutely insane. I think it took a bitmap like a month or two to actually mint out. I don't know exactly the day. And Ordinals wallet kind of helped push this. They used the same map that they did on Bitmap to then just inscribe NATs. And I've been kind of following to see where else this is going. I think Genie Data has been following this along pretty closely. But it's a new form of a way to create tokens on Bitcoin outside of just doing the first in, first out method, or first is first method, which is mostly for inscriptions, but this is for tokens. You could do this like decentralized mint for BRC20, but we've seen now that you have users who are literally trying to snipe it and try to prevent BRC20s. Obviously, there's such a heavy attack on it. This is a completely different way. I don't know if there's going to be a way for you to censor this kind of stuff because people are just using their creativity to kind of mint these different types of coins. And one last point, and then I'll push it over to you, is right now Bitmap's, in my opinion, is kind of going through its second phase where the legitimacy of the idea, I think, is pretty established. I don't think that's going away. Now you're starting to see it on Dogecoin and some of these other ones. So now in the next phase, I think the community is kind of coming around and deciding, okay, what do we want now? And it's kind of going through this fungible token renaissance where they're trying to figure out, how do we now transact value across the ecosystem? So you have digital matter theory. There's a new token called, I think it's BMP, where you can basically just claim tokens based off of the amount of bitmap that you own. And then there's another one called wrapped bitmap, to where you could take your bitmap, wrap it, and then they spit out a BRC20 on the other side, almost kind of like a fractionalized kind of pool, or an NFTX kind of pool. So I think we're going to see over the next maybe a few months, one of these tokens are going to emerge to become the leader. At least they'll take the majority of the kind of transactional value across the Bitmap ecosystem. Of course, Bitmap, right, there's nothing really there yet. It's just like a plot, and they're still trying to create the rule set. But I find digital matter theory interesting because you don't have to apply it to just Bitmap. You can say, right, I could just say, hey, I'm going to create Jake 2 token, right, on through NAT, and anytime Jake pops up in any block, now you could go mine it, or you could go inscribe that block, and then you own whatever that value is. So it's kind of more like an adventure game, which I think is like very inherent to what Bitcoin's kind of principles are of this like decentralized and fair mint. But now that I've explained it to you, Adam, what do you think? Are you bullish on the idea, or is it a bunch of fugazi?
Well, in a way, we're since the launch of Bitcoin, we're still struggling with this idea of a fair mint, right? How do you distribute an asset in a way that is somehow fair? And I mean, that's literally what the argument with the laser eyes is that Satoshi's, the way it happened, even though Satoshi owns, 8% of the total Bitcoin supply, it was done in some immaculate conception sort of way. And Satoshi's not coming back, and those coins aren't moving, and this is all fair. And we're still struggling with that, because the reality is you're creating something out of nothing. And if you're creating something out of nothing, if I get 30% of that, and then the community or whatever layers on value on top of this, how is that in any way fair that I got 30% at the beginning, right? And so, I think part of what the apes did, Bitcoin punks did with this like free fair mint, is like a new model that's kind of got layered on top of it, which was unique and interesting. But of course, those guys got a whole swath of them at the beginning.
They inscribed like 20% of the supply.
Yeah, because they basically created it, right? And so, I don't understand the full technicalities of what you just described to me, so I can't really comment on whether or not this is a better system. But we haven't arrived at the final system, right? I think it's like crypto, we're still very much trying to figure this out. And it's almost like three things. We're looking for, one, this idea of like a free mint or a fair mint. Crypto, we're trying to figure out utility, which you then layer on top of this fair mint. And then we're looking at like, well, how does that thing that I created have some sort of value? What's the value prop to it? Which I think we've seen with Blast this past week, which, Pac-Man was smart. He's like, well, here's the inherent value, which is we're going to basically stake it on Ethereum and earn the value, and everybody understands that value prop. So you know, it almost feels like we're close to somehow kind of merging these three things together. And I don't know what it's going to be, but I almost feel like in this cycle, somebody's going to figure that out in a way that's going to create a tremendous amount of value. And I don't know what it's going to be, you know, but you know, if this Nat's it, you know, I don't know, because it seems to be missing that one key thing, which, like, you know, Pac-Man was able to just like latch onto. You know what I'm saying? So they're almost like these three aspects that need to like work in harmony. And who knows, man? Maybe there's this new crypto, you know, token that comes in, which kind of merges all of these three things together in some, you know, magical way, which becomes, you know, Bitcoin 2.0.
So you're saying Portal Coin?
You know, there is this social aspect. I mean, I don't know if anybody knows here, because I haven't seen it, you know, properly laid out where in a way that makes sense. How are they tracking, you know, engagement on Twitter to then push back into like how much reward you get? Does anybody know how that's actually happening on a technical level?
I actually have no idea. Raise your hand if you do know. I have not engaged in the Portal Coin stuff. I've participated in some of the farmings, but I felt like after I saw everything on Twitter, I'm like, I'm already too late to this. So I'm just gonna sit it out.
Yeah. But I mean, I know a lot of it has to do with, okay, how much engagement you get on your tweets, retweets and stuff. But how are they measuring that? Are they like scraping Twitter and then pushing that back into their algorithm on who gets how many, you know, tokens or reward points or whatever?
They probably purchased the API package, which is quite expensive. It's like 50K.
Yeah, it's like 40 grand or some crazy amount, right? Per month, or I don't even know. But something like that is really interesting. Like if you can bring that social metric back into your protocol on a protocol level, makes a lot of sense. Like we've talked about that with social networks and trying to create a decentralized social network. If you can actually pull data like that back into the social network, you know, it's all very, very interesting. But most of it's still Ponzi's right now at this point.
It does feel like this year in 2023 that we are getting closer to this kind of crypto social network that everyone's wanted.
Yep.
I think the issue with, you know, Farcaster and Lens and some of these other ones and Noster is that you're completely starting over with a new audience, and nobody wants to do that. It seems like now these networks and protocols are trying to find ways to leverage your existing Twitter audience. Crypto Twitter has been around since the inception, right? You see Hal Finney talking about running Bitcoin in 2009. So I don't think at this point that there's a way to detach Twitter to this new social network. So you got to find a way to import the audience to the new network, right? Friendtech did a good job at doing this. Some of these other new protocols are trying to find different ways to go about it. It doesn't feel like we're completely there, but it does seem like there's been a new focus on this idea of taking your existing audience on Twitter and trying to tokenize it in some way to then, you know, turn it into a giant megaphone on the chain.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah. But by the way, did you see speaking of Friendtech, the Friendtech founder left Twitter? Did you see that? Yeah. Deleted his account.
Speaking of Friendtech, I had my buddy Mooncat2878. I'd bought his share or his key at like 0.1 and it went up to like 2 ETH or something, and he was like number 1 or like top 10 for a while. And then I went back to Friendtech like 2 days ago and literally the entire system imploded. Like literally like 70% of the TVL left in the matter of like 2 days. And when I was reading about what the issue was, a bunch of the users feel like the Friendtech team is not listening to them. They turned on this new like kind of point voting post system where you get you get points based off of the amount of value you hold in your keys. People make posts like on Twitter, and then you can vote on these posts. And so then they moved the airdrop post system to this, and everyone was annoyed. And I guess everyone kind of said, fuck it. So if you are long on SocialFi, it's probably the right time to go in it. But, you know, him leaving is probably not a good sign.
Not a good sign.
Twitter. They also, the team made 20 million in fees, and it's only 3 people on the team. So you could see, you know, you could kind of see there's a possibility of them leaving, although they are backed by Paradigm. So I don't think there's going to be a rug of any essence, but I don't know, man. The airdrop for the points on Frentech, I believe, is 2 or 3 months away still. I'm still holding a few shares. I pop in there every once in a while, but it's pretty heavy ghost town, which I mean, every crypto protocol really goes through this, where you have this massive kind of leg up and then massive leg down in terms of.
I heard Blast. Somebody, it was on, I think, Pio's show. The points apparently are like 24 months away, like 2 years. I was like, what? How are they going to do that? Who's 2 years? Bro, if it's 2 months, it's too long. I mean, I don't know, man. It seems like, well, I don't know who's on Frentech anymore, right? I mean, I just, it's like that's what I'm almost saying, like here with it, just the vibes I'm getting right now is it's come and going like in days, and almost like Blast is almost off of the timeline now. Like almost people have moved on from that already, which is like, wow, that's incredible. $600 million put into a protocol and people have already moved on, man.
Attention span is getting shorter.
That's we may be in the bull market right now, man. Holy mackerel.
Yeah, you got a lot popping off. But going back to Ordinals, there's another thing. Casey came out yesterday, the Jubilee that he had been talking about for, I'd say, months now at this point. There will be no more curse inscriptions beginning at block height 8,200, or what is it? 800,000.
Can he use a comma, for God's sake?
I get confused. It's like, is that 8 million?
Yeah, it's 824,000. Yep.
Dude, these guys keep uploading new Ord clients, and man, it's such a pain in the ass to keep re-indexing all this stuff. It's so annoying on the back end. But basically, what's happening here is after that block height, there will be no more curse inscriptions. Everything will get a positive integer, and the curse inscriptions that are cursed now will remain cursed forever.
Yeah, I think it's interesting from a collectability standpoint for sure, right?
Build on that. Why?
Yeah, I think it's this, and I mean, it all depends on Ordinals becoming a thing, right? A long-term thing. But if you're looking 10 years out and people are still doing Ordinals, or maybe it's too expensive, and so like these are just like this sliver of time when Ordinals popped off, but people are still using Bitcoin blockchain to store data, through the Ordinals kind of protocol. It just becomes this really interesting moment in time where we had these negative inscription numbers, and I don't know, somebody in the space will have to tell us what number we're up to of negative inscription numbers. But just it's just interesting from a collectability standpoint that, oh, look at these were so weird, these didn't fit into the protocol at the time, so they numbered them negatively. I think from a collectability standpoint, it's pretty interesting. I mean, there are going to be hundreds of thousands of them, probably, maybe millions. I don't even know. So it's not like all of them are going to have value, but just from a collectability standpoint, it's interesting that they're there, from my point of view.
I can't wait for cursed Bitcoin punks to start pumping afterwards again.
I mean, they did them, right? Like people were aping that day. It's like, I don't know. I might have even got a couple. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was the same Bitcoin punks people, or the same one who did curse Bitcoin punks. They kind of just been holding those back for a little while. Yep. Prism, I'm glad you raised your hand, because I was actually going to ask you from an artist standpoint, is cursed inscription something that is intriguing, or have you participated in creating or inscribing any art on cursed ordinals?
Yeah, I think cursed are super interesting. And if I'm not wrong, we are under 300K cursed inscriptions. Okay. If we go back to this whole conversation about inscription numbers and how that played out and how it was kept, I think that was an important moment in saying, long term, inscription numbers matter in a way of just like referencing inscriptions. And so I do think cursed will be a whole meta that is slept on for now, but will really pop off when this gets closed off. During the depths of the bear, there were a couple of big meds on Ordinals, kind of drained some liquidity. People were less willing to mint things from there, but we just kept going. Like we've had a release every week for the last 22 weeks, and when the supply wasn't all the way minted out, we cursed the rest of the supply, and those are being diamond handed at this point. So I think those are probably the most valuable things that we've put out. Yeah, I think this is really cool. We're about to burn something over, and we've been wanting to do it. We're positive, but like now we're thinking like, man, do these use this early parent inscription, use these 450 sats, do them on cursed inscriptions. It's like the trifecta. I do think this is going to be an important thing, and these are going to be grails, even though there's probably going to be less than 500K of them.
Yeah, that is exciting. Do you view cursed ordinals in the similar capacity to rare sats? Although I know they can be on rare sats, it's kind of this like kind of abstract idea. Do you see cursed ordinals as like a kind of a canvas, like some other artists see rare sats?
I think you can definitely lean into it, right? We've seen that a lot. Not necessarily with like the cursed punks; those are typically the same thing, but from an art standpoint, yeah. You see like just some basic stuff, inverting colors and flipping things around, and but I still think it's cool to kind of lean into those narratives. But yeah, I do think this is like one thing that you can do that is not going to be, you're not going to be able to do it forever, and so it stamps this moment in time where like it was really like fuck around and find out, like we're just gonna break everything, we're gonna test everything. And in the future, you're not going to be able to do it. And so I do think it's going to be this like really intriguing thing over time.
Yeah, I feel that as well. Should be interesting to kind of see what happens there. But we are making one step closer every day towards the Ord 1.0 client, where Casey has said once that happens, he's going to take a seat back from development. And I know he's also working on runes, which is kind of interesting, because we are going through a absolute fungible standard explosion on Bitcoin. It is almost impossible to keep up. There's a new one called Rings, I think, from Saturn. So we have Tap, we have BRC20, we got Pipe, we got Runes that's coming. There's Atomicals, you have Counterparty, right? It's just, do you think all of these can coexist together, or take the other side of the perspective where these meta protocol communities on Bitcoin grow so large that they all need their own fungible standard, and that the standards don't communicate with each other and just are more insulated? What's your thoughts?
Ooh, I think didn't we have some BCH guys who were like, nah, it becomes like a weird kind of shit show of
BSV guys.
BSV. And yeah, and it just becomes a weird non-operable kind of system. I think one's got to win. There can only be one, when it comes to this. And so my gut says BRC20 wins. That would be where I would lay my bets if I was betting, and I'm not betting. So, and I'm often wrong on this stuff. So, but it feels like first, with largest community is going to win. That's what it would feel like. But, don't discount runes, because, you got the biggest mouthpiece, it's going to go forward with that one. And certainly a lot of people are going to ape. There's going to be a whole, craziness around that when that actually launches. So it's possible that one wins, and it's going to be more efficient and, probably going to work better and out of the gate and stuff like that. So maybe that one wins, but who knows, man? It's just, again, it's this fungible tokens. Okay, we still have fungible tokens. They still pop off all the time. But at the end of the day, they're still just, they're mostly worthless. They mostly go to zero. I'm always looking for what are we going to do better? What's going to be the interesting thing? Why would this be interesting? So, yeah, I don't know.
A heavy lack of utility. One may say. If I had to rank it right now, it's kind of and classify this. You have BRC20, which has really become more of, I guess, I say this like very lightheartedly, the institutional kind of token standard, because it's on Binance, right? Now you have like leverage trading on it. People are going long and short, and they could trade it basically on a chart. Once you hit Binance and it's a chart, right? The traders really don't give a fuck what the underlying asset is. They just want to go either long or short on it and make some money. But since it's on Binance, you could see options will come to it, right? All these kind of financial kind of instruments. And it's going to be really hard to displace that once you're tied into the largest, marketplace. I know CZ stepped down, but it seems like they're still kind of continuing. with operations. Already had a fair mint, so obviously it's not a security. It's free. It was free and fair. So it kind of checks all of those boxes there. So in second place, you have Tap. And I find it, or that the track ecosystem, I should say, because they have Tap and they have Pipe. Pipe is meant to compete with Runes, and then Tap is meant to compete with BRC20. And they both have incremental improvements. But the thing here, though, is the track community's grown quite large, right? Benny's done a great job at curating a very committed, almost cult-like community to where they're supporting everything that he does. He's also, indexing for bitmap. So he's got a large majority of the community on his side. And there's a lot of crossover there. I went on the Tap Spaces on Tuesday and talked with Santiago and some of those people who are running the TapX exchange. And there's a lot of people who showed up to it, and they're still pretty far behind. They still don't have a transfer function. So they're kind of in the early stages of even just where Ordinals was back in maybe like March time.
Yep.
We'll see where that evolves. And then you have obviously Runes and Casey's stuff. What happens there, I have no idea, because all of the Runes tokens are all going to be numerical assets. There's no unique kind of characters to it, right? He said he was going to do it all in numbers. So it's going to be people are going to view it a very different way. I don't think we've ever seen a fungible standard that's represented by just numbers. Yeah. At least from my understanding, all kind of fungible tokens have a ticker symbol. So here it'll be something different. Obviously, Casey, and we talked about this before, you can already see it across CoinDesk and across the block and all these major headlines where it says creator of Bitcoin Ordinals launches second protocol on Bitcoin, right? Like that's obviously going to attract a lot of capital and a lot of interest.
Yep.
But will people stay and build on it? Or does it just become this kind of, I guess, shitcoin casino, which he wants?
I mean, and it could, I mean, look, the way it is. If you roll it out, not in a way that people vibe with, it could die very quickly, right? I don't think it will, because I think he's got enough people around him where he'll figure out a strategy which will make sense. But when I saw it's going to be a string of 28 numbers or whatever, bro, that's a loser. So how quickly is it going to get down to something that's manageable, or are you going to be able to like lay names on top of the numbers, or all these things he's got to figure out in a way that makes some sense. When he was talking about, well, if you get to the 1 digits, it's going to be, $1 million to do one, all those kind of factors, if those aren't done right, it could shit the bed really, really quickly. But Casey is smart, and there are a lot of smart people around him. So, I would bet that he rolls it out and it's pretty effective, and gets a lot of excitement around it. So, but we got to see, right?
The DGen casino. I mean, Casey's, he's a very smart guy. I've actually been quite critical of his decision to go with Runes. I still think this is taken away a lot of credibility from him. I think the community kind of just views him as just another participant rather than this like all-seeing prophet, which he was kind of on this pedestal for a long time. Now that some of the improvements are censoring all JSON inscriptions from the Explorer, to me shows that they're taking curatorial decision making and not as decentralized, which is okay. To me, it's just they're viewing it more as a business. If you're curating the Explorer, the main Explorer, and not allowing anything, there's obviously a decision behind why that is. But ultimately, again, right, it always comes down to the heart of every Bitcoin disagreement is always this idea of spam. It's literally the core.
It's so funny, right? It literally is.
Every single Bitcoin argument and disagreement comes down to it looks like shit or it's spamming the blockchain. It's literally every single one at the core. And that's the same thing that he says here, is that all these JSONs make the Explorer look ugly. But if you are creating if you want this to be decentralized and viewed if you want this to be viewed decentralized, it shouldn't matter how it looks. That's the messiness of decentralization, is that you're going to see things that you don't want. Yeah. So if you're taking an active, curation aspect to it, there's more to it than just that. He also had mentioned that I guess he's tying in runes to ordinal theory somehow. I don't know how that's going, how he's actually doing that or what it actually means. But if anyone has any information on that from a technical standpoint, that would be cool. But I'll be participating. I'll definitely gonna ape into it. It's obviously gonna go.
You don't bet against it, man. You know what I mean?
Obviously
It's
gonna
like,
go up. Yeah,
yeah.
it's just I'm looking at it from a different lens because of everything that's kind of unfolded over time. So should be interesting to say the least.
I mean, we've learned, if I've learned anything, I've learned that you don't bet against powerful either institutions or people. And Casey's a powerful person with a lot of influence. At least in the short term, those things tend to go up. They may crash eventually long term, but if you look at BAYC or Frank from D Gods or Casey, things like this tend to, at least in the short term, pump. So don't fade that pump in the beginning, but long term they may not, hold so much value.
Yeah, I believe this morning, our favorite other inscription ecosystem had a very large milestone that they reached. They have launched officially their Facet protocol, which was created by the creators of Inscriptions, by Michael and Tom, who is Middle March. They launched Facet, and so you ask, like, what's Facet? And first, I want to note that Tom and Michael are fully on board with this idea of Facet, and because if you look at Tom's profile page, it's literally Facet is labeled in like 4 different spots. So if you're in the Inscription ecosystem, this should be something that you are definitely pay attention to. And so it says Facet. Facet is a decentralized, low-cost computing platform. So if you understand, here's a little bit of a technical perspective. If you understand how inscriptions work, you're basically storing the information into the call data, which is the equivalent of doing the same thing on Bitcoin. But you basically have to create these kind of centralized smart contracts around it so that you could take this data and perform kind of smart contract-like functionality. So they've built a swap tool, they've built a scanner, and they also have something called Facet cards. And Facet cards are kind of like, they're almost like ENS. It's like names that you have. And so that went live today. But if you're watching the live stream, you can see here Facet swap. I mean, it looks good, right? Because you're taking your ETH S20 tokens, which are like the BRC20s. They have a swap tool, which, Bitcoin Ordinals is going through the same phase right now with a swap tool for that's on Unisat, which has had, I guess, minimal traction. They have a bridge, and then they have a scanner, and then they have Facet cards. And I'll pull this up here. And I have to say, I woke up at like 4 a.m. a few weeks ago to literally e-scribe as many names as I could. I got Jake and I got a bunch of them. Spent like, I don't know, half an ETH in inscribing names. So we'll see where it goes. But if you e-scribed any of these Facet cards, you can also get something called a sunrise sticker, I guess. It says, what's a sunrise sticker? It's a Facet card sticker you could claim if you pre-registered. You could claim it as soon as your cards are airdropped. I believe they should be airdropped today at some point. Yep. And you get the sticker. I think it's more of just like a POAP kind of thing on it. And they also finally published their full documentation. I highly recommend it. I woke up and went through it a little bit before this call, but it looks like they created their own smart contract language called Rubidity.
I thought that was a funny name. Yeah,
Rubidity, right? I mean, Tom he literally created the website genius.com. So I think
these guys know what they're doing for sure.
What's your thoughts on Facet and the emerging ETH ecosystem? I think they've definitely taken second place in terms of all inscription ecosystems.
Yeah, it's these guys are smart. I think the idea of inexpensive on-chain NFTs on Ethereum it's exciting. Like I think inscriptions are a really, really brilliant idea. It just makes sense. Now, whether that will build to something that's interesting other than just JPEGs, on-chain JPEGs, I don't know. I think the idea of an L1 inexpensive smart contract-based system is really, really exciting, right? I'm surprised more people haven't latched onto this idea. So we'll see where it goes. Just that though, foundationally, an inexpensive, smart contract system on Ethereum, why would you ever use an L2, right? We'll see where it goes. It's literally launched today. I checked out their Discord. It's a complete, as you would expect, complete shit show. Because 800 people trying to all claim their cards, all trying to mint the new first whatevers. I'm sure it's just a complete disaster over there, as to be expected. But what comes out of it, who knows? I'm excited to see it. Obviously, they were able to raise some money because those cards, to get the short names, you had to pay. And it's just like ENS. It renews every year. You have to pay to renew it. So they were able to get some funding for themselves, which is good because now they can actually work on this thing and build it out. I just think it's another one of these things that give creative people an interesting thing to try. And certainly if you could do something on L1, why would you ever use an L2? Right? Just makes sense. And we'll see where it goes.
I thought it was really kind of captivating, the conversation we had with Michael and Tom. That Massive Spaces a few weeks ago, the big light bulb moment for me was the comparison that Michael said that Escription is basically a competitor to all the L2s.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow. Right.
Because, dude, that's a big deal.
Which is because the L2 space right now, we talked about this on Tuesday. It's quite crowded. You have all these different gamifications, and you even had Vitalik, the creator of Ethereum, come out and say that the L2 ecosystem is moved into a way that he didn't predict. He thought that it would all be kind of homogeneous and everything would be the same in terms of the structure. And it's turned out to be the complete opposite, which I want to just note that the majority of time when you create a crypto protocol or a blockchain, people are going to use it in a way that you didn't plan for.
1,000,000%.
In case he has found this out. pretty hard and true.
Yep.
So the fact that they could create this, and I actually made an Escription transfer yesterday. It cost $1.50 when gas was like 50 Gwei. Yeah. I saw a tweet this morning that somebody said the reason why gas is so high this morning was there was an Escription mint of like 25,000 mints, and it was causing gas to go high. But if you're minting an Escription, your gas cost is not the equivalent of 50 Gwei on mainnet, right? You're paying maybe 10 or 20% of what that is. So these people are just playing in a completely different ecosystem on L1, which is just going to inflate, which could go one of two ways, right? It's either people like the gas goes so high that everyone just goes to Escription, or gas is just continually so high on ETH mainnet that everyone just goes to L2 and pushes everyone away.
Dude, maybe Escriptions make L1 the new L2, It's like, I mean, it's if you think about, Pac-Man getting $600 million to move over to his L2, which doesn't even exist yet. And you think, wait a minute, can we do the same functionality on Ethereum, on L1, in a way that's, a tenth of the cost or even more? I mean, we know for certain transactions, it can be like a 50th of the cost. Holy macaroni. They might be building the most important thing in blockchain right now. Like literally. So it's really, I'm excited for those guys.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, they're both really good guys. Tom's a really good guy. He's gone through a fucking shit show.
Total.
The Bored Ape stuff and everything like that. If you don't know, Tom created the Ape Market, which was part of the lawsuit. So he's been through the ringer a few times, but very, very smart guy. So their Escription to me is probably the second dominant inscription ecosystem. And third to me would be Ordinals, who's really started to catch some heat and some attention as well. Doji, I think it's corrected a little bit, is now sitting around $10 million market cap. FIWB is the second, sitting around like 1.5 million. And if you go to like drc20.org or Doggy Market or even Ordinals wallet, the NFTs or I guess you call it the Doginal inscriptions have started to really come to market. We've seen a bunch of these like sub 100K collections start minting on the launch pad, and people are starting to create collections. It's kind of interesting. There is a big issue right now within the Doginal ecosystem where all three indexers between Ordinals Wallet, Doggy Market, and the Doge Labs one, they're all indexing differently. So they're all going through
Growing
complicated.
pains.
And
Yeah.
well, I was talking with Harry from Ordinals Wallet, like what the issue is here, and he said with Doginals, because of with Dogecoin, the blockchain, there are very regular block reorgs because of how fast the blocks are. So what Doge Labs does is they actually index 10 blocks behind where it is. So Doge Labs is behind, the other two are forward, and the other two marketplaces are getting all these block reorgs, which is just causing a issue with the price. Or the price discrepancies. So they're going to have to, all three of them are probably going to have to come together and figure out a solution for everyone to agree on. If not, it's probably going to be very detrimental to the whole entire ecosystem. So, right, social consensus. We'll see what happens. That if you can't agree on a price, at least for that, it's worse for DRC20. I think inscriptions and the kind of PFP stuff won't be as tough of an issue as the DRC20 stuff, because those are definitely traded in a more of a financial value. But inscription ecosystems are emerging over the last 3-4 weeks. We've seen, I think I saw a base inscription system, Polygon inscriptions ecosystem, Solana inscription ecosystem, Avalanche, right? BNB is there. It's only going to continue to grow. I am a firm believer at this point in time that this is here to stay. And I think it's just a new paradigm. I think it's, again, I've been very heavy about this since BRC20 was created in April or March, that this is a fourth type. BRC20 and DRC20 and all these, this is a fourth type of asset. It's not a fungible token, right? It's not an NFT. It's not an ERC1155. So I call them kind of composable semi-fungibles. New market unlock. It's about over $1 billion of market cap across all of these different blockchains. I think that's only going to continue to balloon over time. So make sure if you're in that ecosystem to just own the first. It's very obvious which one's the first. It's like Stamp, Light, Doji, Ordi, Souls, right? Ethos, all these different type of things. So should be fun. And last but certainly not least, I do want to hear about the Solana ecosystem. I haven't gone through my Sol era yet, but Chris has, and he's been pitching me on it for 2 years now at this point. Bro, give us some updates. What is the most intriguing, or maybe top 3 interesting things that are happening on Solana right now that people should be paying attention to?
Yo, yeah, real quick, just I mean, you guys have a good kind of perspective on ordinals and everything like that. What would you say if you were starting out? What would the like couple biggest things that you would look for over there, and then we can get over into Solana. Let's finish off like that.
That's a good idea. Or that's actually a good call. Bitcoin Ordinals is probably the best to start with, in my opinion. My top 3 ecosystems is BRC20, Bitmap, and probably just go on to Magic Eden and look at all the different collections. That's probably the most friendly way, is to go on Magic Eden /Ordinals, and they have some tutorial videos. They have everything laid out very nice and very clear. It is kind of unfortunate that the dominant market player across other ecosystems is definitely commoditizing ordinals, but they're fastest to the punch, and they're also doing this kind of they've moved into this kind of cross-chain mentality with their wallet, which is pretty exciting. Just only kind of it just authenticates even more what Emblem Vault's been trying to do for 3 years now at this point, or has been doing for over 3 years now at this point. So Magic Eden is definitely the best place to start.
Solid. As for Solana, it's kind of the same thing that Adam was mentioning earlier, where you just see the narratives play out the same over and over again. You go from NFTs kind of nestle these communities, people start using the native coin, then they try to poke around with DeFi and things like that, and then move to a new chain and pretty much repeat. So it just seems like, I feel like at this point in time, if I were a newcomer, I mean, definitely I feel like Bitcoin has the biggest market. So many of those people are so new to the ecosystem, new in the sense of probably post Sailor is kind of when things got kind of popularized. And I think Sailor was buying, I think he bought Bitcoin at like maybe 14K, and it ran to 20K pretty much like right after that. So even in those days, most Bitcoiners, newer ones, are sitting at maybe, maybe a 2x, but maybe they bought 25, 30K. There's not a ton of profits floating around in that ecosystem yet. So when when Bitcoin starts to run a bit and people have a little bit more liquidity, I really see that ecosystem really kind of taking off and people using their coins in a big way. And plus, you have unit bias working towards you as well, where 0.0001 Bitcoin is still a significant amount of money at 60 or 70K, 100K. So always fascinated, love to see advancements in the Bitcoin ecosystem. As for something like Solana, it just is kind of really a joke for a long time. Was you can tell that nobody actually DYORs, like nobody does their own research, right? Like they always push these random memes. They're really good at memeing over on that chain. One of them is just like use Solana, like just use the app, like get some coins, use a couple of the applications on it. Check out true instant settlement and how quickly and responsive a lot of the different apps can be. Use something like Jupiter that has an airdrop coming up soon, which is like akin to something like their Uniswap, things like that. And just kind of use it and experiment on it, and then you can kind of see all the cool things that you can do. But NFTs are kind of having, I mean, it's just so early. You look for these, at least when I'm experimenting and looking for new things to try out, I'm always looking for asymmetric trades. Your downside is limited to 0, like most things in crypto, and how big can it get? If you're looking at the Solana ecosystem today, the market cap is like roughly, of all Solana NFTs, is roughly the size of Bored Ape. That's pretty bonkers, right? Just one NFT at the bottom of a bear market of Ethereum. So much liquidity can kind of pile in there. You have like just kind of your standards like SMBs, kind of like the first main mainstream NFT on Solana, brought some Ethereum liquidity over. That's where like most of the OGs have a lot of project owners, things like that. It's kind of like owning a punk in a smaller fashion, just really kind of OG users of the chain that have been around for a long time, small knit community. One thing that's cool about Solana too is that a lot of these collections have small supply. Like SMBs have 5,000. That's pretty nuts. As your demand levels kind of increase. 5,000 supply in a huge chain is pretty tiny. So these things are extremely reflexive. Mad Lads, they're building that exchange built into their wallet, which is pretty cool. Claynosaurs have kind of a huge IP play. It would probably be closer to like Pudgy Penguins, something like that. But there's a ton to do. I would just say, poke around on the chain, use Magic Eden, use Tensor. A lot of these protocols are at the stage that Ethereum was at 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, I guess, almost 4 now, where they haven't launched their tokens. And so they're going to be airdropping early, retrospective airdrops for previous users. So that's another incentive to just kind of get on the chain and give it a try.
Yeah, give me. Sorry, Jake. And I do notice like just people buying Sol. I think a lot of because Sol's had this big run up, from its low of whatever $8 or $9. So you get all this liquidity, and people then start, playing with that liquidity and buying. I don't know. I'm watching Nick and Pio and their doggos or whatever they have, and it's running.
Doggos, sir. That's Bodoggos.
And I'm watching that it's running up in price, and I'm like, oh, this is what happens when the price of the base token goes up. People use that excess liquidity to, buy NFTs basically. But you said the Jupiter airdrop. Is there a way that people who are listening right now could begin using that? What's the most effective way to position yourself for that sort of airdrop?
Yeah, most of these airdrops are similar to just, the OG Ethereum or Uniswap airdrop or things like that, just retrospective, just for using the protocol.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of, Solana went through a pretty tough phase with SBF era, and where all of the ecosystem coins were low float, high fund FDV. And so they were like really predatory. So now the new age of apps are kind of being really generous, kind of basically kind of like healing, nature is healing type of vibes, where, really kind of thankful that users stuck around. And it was kind of embarrassing for the foundation and a lot of these things where, so many users were kind of taken advantage of early on. So a lot of these airdrops are going to be probably pretty significant. As far as Jupiter, it's probably a bit too late. I think that their airdrop is basically finalized for their snapshot, but Tensor.trade, just I would mess around on there. MarginFi is another, that's like their Aave. There's another list, probably 5 or 10 protocols that'll be airdropping probably within, the next 6 months, that all you have to do is just kind of get involved. And the cool thing about something like Solana is you can get involved with like $5 because transactions are a fraction of a penny. So you can move $5 back and forth, just interact with the protocol, and instantly you're going to qualify for upcoming airdrops. So nobody is nobody's left out due to capital constraints. Everybody can kind of play, and that's kind of like what makes the chain so fun.
I got one question, then I'll call on Satoshi Club right after. Why do you think the NFT ecosystem on Solana has blown up and largely the fungible token ecosystem has lagged behind or really hasn't found any type of adoption?
Yeah, it was kind of there was a lot of competition when Solana was up and coming last year. NFTs were the biggest thing on Ethereum, and so I feel like that was kind of a mirror of what people are looking for. We talk about it a lot, on-chain culture. Jake understands that really well. Adam understands that really well. Of the NFTs of your ecosystem are kind of a representation of the kind of people that are using the chain. And so at ETH, you have a lot of collectors, a lot of high-end NFTs like that. Solana, you just have a lot of builders, a lot of, different kind of use cases that you wouldn't be able to do on other chains. One of the reasons for that is because it's built in Rust. And so you have a lot of Web2 developers that know Rust that don't have, they're not proficient in Solidity smart contracts, but they know how to build in Rust. And so they can build in Rust on Solana. And so their dev skills kind of translate. And so they're able to spin up cool kind of Web2, Web3 ideas in a fashion that they wouldn't be able to because they can't code in the Ethereum smart contract language. So you have like a lot of use cases that can kind of attract those Web2 audiences that weren't possible before. A cool one is kind of like STEPN, that walking app that went super mainstream, that nobody even knew that they were using a blockchain. Well, obviously that was built on Solana. And so the way that I think about it, at least, is kind of the path of least resistance forward is we already had one mainstream app in the earliest days of the chain. STEPN was pretty big. It was doing like mega millions of dollars, probably maybe a few billion at the top. It was like a phenomenon. It was really crazy. And most of these people didn't even realize that they were using a blockchain. And so we had one mainstream app from the chain. The path of least resistance is probably, another mainstream app, because that's just, the parameters make it possible for low friction transactions, low friction user interface. And so, yeah, I would just keep an eye out. A lot of these things are really interesting, and you kind of you can backdate it and look at what was pretty popular on Ethereum, and then you can kind of maybe mirror it and see what might gain a lot of traction over here.
Yeah, one interesting thing I was listening to this morning is that Empire podcast with Jason Santiago, and they're talking about how a lot of the new AI software is actually written in Rust, and so they're theorizing that Solana and Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's also written in Rust, will be the two most compatible blockchains for AI software in the future. It was kind of interesting. I didn't realize that. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
What episode? What was that? It's the what podcast?
The Empire podcast. It's Santiago and Chris. What's the other guy's name? I forget his name.
Is it Yano?
Yano, yeah.
Empire?
Yeah. And Yano. Yeah, they have a really, really good. It's Blockworks. If you're familiar with Blockworks, they're pretty much.
And you can kind of, even just listening to something like Empire, you can really see the shift in mindshare that Solana has had over the past year or so, and how frequently, like I haven't talked to Yano, but it almost seems like he's becoming more of a Solana maxi at this point. He kind of poses these questions to diehard ETH maxis and things like that, of that nature, of just, why would you build on all these layer 2s if you can just build on a singular layer 1? And that kind of goes back to the statement earlier of, it's like you can tell who's done their own research. Even, they just released a podcast with Olaf, who is the first Coinbase employee, and he's kind of posing these questions of like, if you're investing in new protocols and new builders, how are you guiding them on where to build and things of that nature? He's like, why would they build on all of these random layer 2s? How do you choose which layer 2 to build on when you can just build on a singular layer 1? And it was almost kind of like Olaf didn't really, I'm not saying that he didn't understand. He's obviously a fantastic investor, founder of Polychain Capital, like, you know, huge respect, followed him for a long time in the space. But it's like a lot of them, there's been so much noise over the years in terms of new protocols that didn't get any traction and things like that, that you almost write off all of the new things as just being another shiny new thing.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, one of these is going to have serious staying power. And so I think that that's why it's important to look at these NFT volumes, look at where the communities are truly forming. That's kind of what made it an easy bet. Look at the volumes of NFTs at any given day. There's 3 chains that are on there. It's Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana every single day. So that should kind of like pique your interest and say, what's going on over there? And so maybe keep tabs on that going forward and just kind of look for new up and comers, because that's where the on-chain culture is going to develop.
Well said. I can't wait until we deploy on Emblem Vault on Solana. That's going to be an exciting time. I'm ready to go through my Solana era, but I'm waiting for that to happen so that
exactly.
I can really dive into it. I do theorize that at some point in the future, you know, for Emblem, most people probably just mint vaults to Solana because it's just so much cheaper at that point, and then move them around, or to Bitcoin, I guess, depending on where the gas fees are sats per VByte. Satoshi Club, thank you for being patient. What is on your mind? If you're there, or you could just be hanging out, or you're on mute if you
You're on
are.
mute.
Yeah, right.
There you are.
Hey guys. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Sorry, I'm.
Yep.
Yeah, we got you.
I'm fiddling around with the phone.
Yep, you're good.
Hey, thank you very much. And also, I wanted to say, yeah, really loved listening to you there, Chris. That's I actually cut my teeth over on Solana a couple of sort of 18 months ago. So I really do think that there's a lot to be explored. And when everybody likes to talk about maximal this, maximal that, I don't think maximal anything is the answer. That's not the way that we all succeed. That's not where we innovate, and that's not where we push things forward. So really interested to hear your take on what's going on over at Solana at the moment, and that's definitely something that we're paying attention to. I just wanted to give a tiny update, which so we were on the show with you guys maybe a week or so ago, and we were talking about multi-sat inscriptions. And so what I did was, I hope you don't mind, it was a bit rude, but I did put our latest post up in the top of the spaces, just to show what we're talking about, because I think last time we were talking about it and perhaps it got a little technical and it wasn't really that obvious what we were trying to do. So I put that up there just to sort of illustrate where we're going, if you like, and why we think that this is something interesting. So what we just as a sort of small recap, if you like, what we were hoping to do is use the postage, if you like, the padding that gets sent with inscriptions, and we wanted to see how we could better utilize that. And what we were trying to do is see how interesting we could make that padding. So what we did was we started off with just a standard sort of cursed PFP, sort of a dynamic inscription that changes with block height and so on. But what we did was we started off by putting that onto an uncommon sat, and then we knit that together with every other type of sat that was going. So essentially what we've done is we've got one PFP that is now sitting on an uncommon, a block 9, a 78, a palindrome, and a pizza sat. So we were kind of busy there.
Let's go. That's awesome.
We were trying to put all this together. Yeah. So it was an interesting, if you like, I hate to use the word experiment, but experiment is definitely what it is, because it took us a while to figure out, and I say we in the broadest sense. So, you know, I am not the dev team. We've got some super hardworking guys over in Asia that have put this experiment together, and I just get the privilege of coming on and talking to you guys a little bit about it. But it was just something that we thought might pique your interest. You know, we've not got anything to sell. We're not selling anything at all, but we just, well, I mean, we have our projects, but today we would just wanted to talk about trying to move things forward and playing with that postage. And one of the comments from Leo last time, we were talking about, so how do we know that all of this just doesn't get lost every time you move your inscriptions around? And so what we were talking about a little bit there was the fact that those first 330 sats are essentially locked by Ord, some marketplaces and some wallets. So it is early. I'm definitely not saying that if you keep moving these around that you can't lose parts of them yet, because it really depends how you do it. But certainly for example, the likes of Magic Eden and Xverse and so on, I think that they also lock those first 330 sats. So that's sort of pretty safe. And what we're looking to do is, we were talking to Leo about whether or not we could get UXTO exploration going on Ord.io, so we can actually see all the cool things that are going on inside the postage stamp, if you like, that goes along with your Satoshis. So that's sort of where we are. And I just wanted to come on and share that with you guys. And obviously happy to take any questions and sort of talk a little bit more about it if it's of interest.
Well, first, congratulations. That is awesome. For those that weren't in that previous conversation, the joke was creating what do we call it? A deep dish pizza sat. Like the entire UTXO stat is all pizza sats. And then Satoshi Club came up and said that they're actually working on it already. So to see it actually done, congrats. That is awesome. I think I could see that becoming an actual meta or trend, because there's so many rare sats that are out there. Just packaging them all together in one UTXO stack, I think could be another fun game for people to play, which is ultimately what the Sol is at the end of the day. So congrats on that. As promised at the end, I said I was going to reveal something. So I think this is the first time I've said this anywhere, that, myself, Bunzi, and about 8 other people have been working on something called OmniSat for about 8 months now. And so I think coming December, excuse me, you guys are finally going to see what it is. And I have to say, we've done a demo with pretty much everybody between Raph, ZK, Leo, Domo, pretty much everybody. And every single one of these people are extremely blown away with what the product is. So as long as it doesn't break, everyone thinks this is really going to change the game in terms of how BRC20s are traded. It's essentially Uniswap on Bitcoin with a twist. So that marketing campaign should begin here, hopefully pretty soon, probably in the next week.
Oh, you're not going to tell us the twist?
No, I can't reveal.
Yeah.
No way. I cannot reveal all of it. I'm going to leave a little bit out. I'm truly blown away. I have to say, I have so much respect for people who build on Bitcoin. Watching H Wonderland and Andrew and Bunzi and work on the development side of Bitcoin and kind of having them explain everything. It is extremely difficult to build on.
It's not meant for building.
It is tough, dude. I have so much more respect for people who build on Bitcoin. It is absolutely insane, but I'm excited for the product, man. I'm a big believer in it. I had said this literally way back in April. I even have our podcast we recorded. We basically got a house in Vegas back in April, literally like 3 weeks into BRC20 being created, and was like, yeah, we need to create a Uniswap for this, basically. But it is a little bit more advanced than just a basic swap tool. And it took a lot of game planning to get there. And I'm on recording saying, I think whoever figures that out, it's a multi-billion-dollar opportunity there. So this is us putting our entrance and saying that this is what we hope. It'll definitely, if successful, it's going to destroy gas fees on Bitcoin. So, we'll piss off some more people if proven to not blow up in our face. We've been testing it and stuff. So that marketing campaign, that stuff should be coming out here pretty soon. So without further ado, thank you. Yeah, it's exciting. There's a lot of cool crossover opportunities and everything of that, but I'll leave a little bit more of that for the mystery. But I appreciate everyone for coming on stage, man. Chris for the Solana takes and always the great takes. Adam, Prism, Satoshi Club, everyone who joined, who was on stage and not. This was a fun time. The market talks, always fun to catch up with everybody. Again, we do the show Tuesday through Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, talking everything ordinals, inscriptions, collecting, cross-chain. That is everything that we love. We are not against any chain. We just like to follow where the action is. No tribalism allowed here, unless you're pumping my bags, and maybe I'll be tribalistic for a little bit. Until then, guys, please enjoy the rest of your Thursday and the weekend, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday.